For almost a century, there's been one nation that's basically been the global symbol of peace, a country that actually wrote renouncing war into its constitution. But something's changing, and it's changing fast. That same nation is now quietly building one of the most powerful and technologically advanced militaries on the entire planet. And that's the big question we're tackling here. After 80 years of being committed to pacifism, why is Japan suddenly rearming for a potential war? The answers are really complex, and they point to a huge shift in global power that affects all of us. Okay, let's just start with the hardware, because honestly, it is mind-blowing. This is Japan's new superweapon, an electromagnetic railgun. It doesn't use gunpowder or anything like that. It uses pure electric energy to fire projectiles so fast they could literally split an enemy warship right in two. And get this is a technology that even the United States hasn't fully perfected yet, but Japan has. And it definitely doesn't stop there. Japan is buying 400 long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles from the US. Now, just to give you a sense of their reach, these things could be launched from Japan and hit targets all the way in the Middle East. That puts a massive part of Asia well within its striking distance. All this new tech costs money, and I mean a lot of money. By 2027, Japan is on track to become the world's third biggest defense spender. That means it's going to leapfrog countries like the UK and France. That is just a shocking jump for a nation that used to take pride in how little it spent on its military. Now, to really understand just how revolutionary this shift is, we have to rewind a bit. This military buildup isn't just about cool new gadgets. It's about turning a page on a powerful legacy, a single piece of law that has defined Japan for generations. Back in World War II, Imperial Japan was this aggressive, expansionist power, notorious for its brutality. But after its defeat, after the horror of the atomic bombs, the country was completely reborn. It shifted its entire focus to economic growth, to innovation, and it adopted this deeply anti-military culture, depending almost entirely on the United States for its security. And this right here, this is the legal heart of that transformation. After the war, the U.S. helped write Japan's new constitution, and Article 9 was the absolute cornerstone. It says, flat out, that Japan will never maintain military forces. It was a complete and total rejection of war as a concept. So Japan's military became the self-defense force, and the name says it all. It was strictly for defense. Here's a perfect example of how strict this was. When Japan sent troops to support the U.S. in Afghanistan, they weren't even allowed to carry guns. Their only job was logistics, like providing transport and fuel. That's it. So who changed all this? I mean, a shift of this magnitude doesn't happen by accident, right? It was the result of a long, calculated plan, pushed forward by one of modern Japan's most influential and, controversial leaders. Enter former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He made strengthening Japan's national security his #1 mission. In 2014, he did something radical. He reinterpreted Article 9 to allow for collective self-defense, which means Japan could now defend its allies. Then he helped form the Quad Alliance to counter China's growing influence. By the time he left office, Japan's military was a totally different beast. And you can see the results right here in the numbers. This chart just shows this dramatic explosion in defense spending that Abe started, and his successors are now hitting the accelerator on. It's the clearest picture you'll see of a nation completely changing its priorities. So why? Why did Abe and the leaders who followed him feel this was so urgent? Why throw away 80 years of pacifism? Well, the answer becomes pretty clear when you look at a map. Japan lives in a really, really dangerous neighborhood. The first, and maybe the most unpredictable threat, is sitting right across the sea. North Korea's constant provocations have become a major source of fear for Japan. For years, North Korea was literally kidnapping Japanese citizens to train its spies. More recently, and way more terrifying, they've been test-firing ballistic missiles that fly directly over Japan, setting off air raid sirens and forcing people into shelters. Having a nuclear-armed neighbor that's that unpredictable, well, it's a constant source of terror. Okay, so North Korea is a wild card, but the second threat is seen as far more strategic and, in the long run, much, much bigger. We're talking, of course, about China. China's growing power is really the main engine driving Japan's rearmament. Beijing has fired missiles that have landed in Japan's economic waters, they claim Japanese islands as their own, and, this is the big one, they openly threaten to invade Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is just 100 kilometers from Japan. A war there would immediately threaten Japan's security and could sever the trade routes that are its economic lifeblood. And then, in 2022, a war thousands of miles away served as the final, undeniable wake-up call for Tokyo. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine sent absolute shockwaves through Japan's leadership. The prime minister at the time, Fumio Kishida, put it perfectly with this really powerful quote. The idea that a big country could just invade its smaller neighbor was no longer a hypothetical. It was real. And with Russia literally on Japan's northern border, that threat felt very, very close to home. So with all these threats piling up, Japan started to question the one thing it had always relied on, the United States. When the security treaty between the US and Japan was described as non-reciprocal, basically implying it was a one-way street, it sent a pretty clear message to Tokyo. The time had come for Japan to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. So, let's just recap. A pacifist nation is rearming because it is surrounded by hostile powers and is starting to doubt its main ally. This isn't just a local story. This is a development with huge consequences for the entire world. What we're all watching unfold here is a classic geopolitical shift. The entire power balance in the Indo-Pacific, which is one of the most critical regions in the world, is being redrawn right before our very eyes. And this shift means big things for Japan's friends. For the US, it means a stronger partner, but also one that's a lot more independent. For Australia, it makes the Quad alliance much more formidable. And for a country like India, this opens up massive opportunities for partnerships in high-tech defense, in AI, and in cybersecurity. And hey, remember that shocking spending increase we talked about? Well, get this. Even with that massive jump, Japan's defense budget is still only about 1% of its GDP. Most major powers spend way more than that. So as dramatic as this all feels, this could very well just be the beginning. Which leaves us all with one final, really complicated question. For 80 years, Japan's pacifism was seen as a good thing, a force for stability. Now that this era is clearly over, does a stronger, more assertive Japan make the world safer by balancing out other threats? Or does it just add another powerful, armed player to an already tense and dangerous world?